The asylum was eerily silent. For decades, no one had dared to step foot inside its dilapidated walls. But tonight, we were going to change that. Armed with only a flashlight and a camera, we were going to spend the night in the most haunted place in town. As soon as the sun dipped below the horizon, we raced to the asylum, or what was left of it. Built in 1928, this place had once been a state-of-the-art mental hospital. But over the years, it fell into disrepair and was abandoned in the 80s, now overgrown and in ruins. It stood as a looming silhouette against the bruised sky, a constant reminder of the town's forgotten past. But there was something else, something sinister lurking within its shadowed halls. For years, locals had whispered tales of strange occurrences at the asylum, enough to give even the most skeptical of souls pause. And tonight, we were going to find out if there was any truth to these stories. We stepped cautiously through the rusted metal gates, their mournful groan echoing our own unease. Before us lay the asylum, shrouded in an oppressive silence that seemed to amplify the pounding of our hearts. As we drew closer, the faint sound of whispering voices reached our ears, growing steadily louder until they formed coherent words. Visiting hours are over. Visiting hours are over. The intercom crackled to life, its antiquated voice echoing through the empty halls. It was a jarring sound, one that seemed to materialize out of nowhere, and it sent a chill down our spines. For decades, the asylum's power had been cut, yet the intercom still worked. We exchanged nervous glances, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Should we turn back? But curiosity, that insatiable human trait, kept us rooted to the spot. Pushing open the heavy oak doors, we stepped inside. The musty air hung heavy with the scent of decay and the weight of untold stories. Cobwebs brushed against our faces as we made our way deeper into the building, the floorboards groaning beneath our feet like the lament of the restless spirits that supposedly haunted these halls. Then we saw it, the source of the whispers, the ghostly apparition that had been drawing us deeper into the asylum's embrace. It was an old woman, her face as weathered and worn as the peeling paint on the walls, her eyes vacant and haunting. She was sitting in a wheelchair, her thin frame enveloped in a moth-eaten blanket. As we approached, she turned her head slowly, revealing a pair of eyes that seemed to hold a lifetime of sorrow and secrets. A strangled cry escaped my lips as I instinctively recoiled. The old woman, sensing our unease, turned back, her shoulders shaking as if in a fit of despair. In the flickering beam of our flashlight, we saw more patients, or what appeared to be patients, huddled in various states of undress in different corners of the room. Some were rocking back and forth, their eyes wide and unseeing. Others were sitting motionless, their postures distorted and unnatural. A sudden crash from above shattered the silence. We froze, our gazes darting around the room, searching for the source of the noise. Then we heard it again, footsteps, heavy and deliberate, descending the staircase. Adrenaline surged through me, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I knew we should run, but my feet felt glued to the spot. The footsteps stopped just outside the room, and then we heard a voice raspy and hollow, as though coming from beyond the grave. "Get out," it hissed. "Get out now." Terror lent speed to my movements as I scrambled for the door. I could hear the old woman's voice, shrill and piercing, echoing through the asylum. "They're here," she cried. "They've come to take us away." As I burst through the doors, I risked a glance back. The room was empty. The patients vanished. The old woman was gone. Had it all been a figment of our imaginations, a cruel trick of the fading light and our own heightened fears? Or had we truly witnessed something sinister, something that lurked in the shadows of our collective consciousness? Outside, the night was filled with the cacophony of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. The asylum stood dark and silent behind me, its secrets safe within its crumbling walls. As we drove away, the old woman's words echoed in my mind. "They're here. They've come to take us away." Had we been so bold as to trespass on hallowed ground? Had we disturbed spirits best left undisturbed? I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd woken something ancient and malevolent, something that now knew of our presence and wasn't pleased. Hello, I'm here today to talk about this story titled The Shadow Man, which is actually written by one of our users, messed up beyond belief. So let's dive right into it. And we find ourselves in the first person. We are with our two friends. Our friend Evan is setting up his camera, and our friend Claire has a flashlight, and we are together exploring an abandoned old hospital. It's actually a place that the author went to as a kid, and he hadn't been back since. He says it was originally built in the late 1800s and served as a Civil War hospital, and that it had been shut down for about 30 years. It smelled very faintly of mildew and some kind of metallic scent that stuck at the back of his throat. They walked past rooms with beds and instruments still inside. One room contained a dentist's chair where someone had recently carved their initials, perhaps hoping to be immortalized forever. He wondered if they'd found anything interesting yet. Continuing down the hall, they reached the surgical wing, the last room before they planned to leave. They entered the operating room, and it felt suddenly much colder and heavier. The circular arrangement of the room and high ceilings made it feel like a Roman Colosseum. Rust had eaten through the operating table, and an old lamp hung above, swaying from a rusty chain. Evan set up his camera and started talking into it, saying that this was the surgical wing. After 30 years, it looks like nothing has been disturbed. As he's speaking, Claire begins sweeping her flashlight around the room, and the dust in the beam sparkles and drifts lazily like ash. At this point, we get a paragraph where the author gives us some more background on the history of the hospital, and then we return to the scene. They start to speak about how the town and the hospital were named after the man who owned the land, and the hospital had treated Confederate soldiers during the Civil War. It said that people died and never left. Then the author interrupts himself because he heard a noise. They all looked at each other, and he saw a slight grin on Claire's face. She insisted that she had not made the noise, but the three of them stood listening for a moment. It fell silent again, and then the author decides to continue filming, and they go back to talking about the history of the place. After a few moments, Claire tells Evan that she wants to leave. She seems uncomfortable now, and the author says that he can't blame her. The author tells us that he often gets a bad feeling about a place, but mostly that means that he picks up his things and leaves. But this time, the hair on the back of his neck prickled, and he could unshake the feeling that they should leave. Evan finishes up his spiel about the history and then starts panning the camera toward the table once more. The author says that it probably looked better than it did when it was used to hack people to pieces, but it still looked creepy. Suddenly, the author feels something brush against his leg and he jumps. Claire gasps and moves away from him, backing away slowly. She whispers to the others that she wants to get out of there, and the author says that she doesn't have to tell him twice. They hurry toward the door, passing the row of chairs as they leave the room. Then we get a little bit of an interruption. It tells us that for the past hour, they had been walking through this maze of halls, going up and down stairs, and finding more and more bizarre things, including bloodstains on the floor, a boy's body bag, X-ray films in the basement, labeled things like pathological fracture and gunshot wound. Now we return to the operating room, where they are rushing out the door. We get a couple of sentences telling us that the author could see the hallway and the door out of the corner of his eye, and he could see that they were getting far away from the surgical wing. He could feel the hairs on his arms and neck stand on end. He kept his eyes on the door. All of a sudden, heavy footsteps began coming toward them from the other end of the hallway. They were loud and menacing. All three of them stopped and listened. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by a dragging sound, like someone was dragging themselves along the floor. They turned and stared at the door. Then they ran. When they finally get outside, catching their breath, Evan checks the footage, and the last clip shows the three of them running for the exit. As they watch, the camera swings back toward the operating theater and shows someone standing in the doorway. The figure stands perfectly still, and its head is cocked, as if watching them leave. At this point, the story ends. No, overall, I really liked this story. I think it was really well written and paced. It hooked me right away, especially that opening line. While filming in the surgical wing, their camera caught a figure. I thought that was a great opening hook. The entire story is told from the first-person perspective of the narrator, keeping me involved and engaged and making me feel like I was right there exploring this abandoned hospital with them. It does a great job of building suspense, starting with the unsettling descriptions of the hospital and the gradual progression to more disturbing discoveries. The author skillfully builds tension throughout the story, culminating in the terrifying encounter with the footsteps and the shadowy figure. The ending is also very effective. Leaving the story open to interpretation makes it even scarier because we don't know what exactly happened. Was it a ghost? Was it something more sinister? That ambiguity is what makes this tale truly terrifying. And the ending with the shadowy figure watching them leave is just chilling. There are some parts where the story lags a little bit in the middle. There are long descriptions of the history of the hospital and of the place that I found myself wanting to skip over and get to the action. But overall, I really enjoyed reading this, and I thought it was a well-written and scary story. So that brings us to the next part of the show. If you enjoyed this episode, Please remember to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any future episode. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. I'll see you next time.
Welcome to my channel. The air in the asylum was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. I could hear the drip, drip, drip of water from a leaky pipe somewhere in the darkness. My headlamp cut through the gloom, revealing peeling paint and rusted medical equipment that hadn't been used in decades. The place was a labyrinth, filled with dark corners and abandoned rooms. I felt like I was being watched, but when I turned to look, there was nothing there. It's just shadows dancing in the light of my headlamp. I'd heard rumors about this place, whispers of things that went bump in the night. Some said it was haunted, others that it was just an old abandoned asylum. But I had to see for myself. I wanted to explore every creaky floorboard and dusty window, even if it meant braving the unknown. As I made my way through the asylum, I came across room after room filled with old beds and straitjackets hanging from hooks in the walls. Each room was worse than the last, more decayed and more disturbing. I felt a sense of dread building inside me, a feeling that I couldn't shake. Then I saw it, a door at the end of the hallway that wasn't like the others. All the other doors were rusted shut, but this one had a keyhole. I took a deep breath and reached for the doorknob. It was cold to the touch, and as I turned it, it made a horrible screeching sound. The door swung open slowly, revealing a hallway that seemed to stretch on forever. Cautiously, I stepped inside. The air on the other side of the door was warm and smelled of disinfectant and bleach. The hallway was brightly lit, the walls freshly painted and the floor spotless. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like walking into another world, a world that was both familiar and strange. As I walked down the hallway, I saw a nurse's station with a clipboard on the counter. On it was a list of names and symptoms, but one name stood out to me. It was my name. And as I read it, I felt a chill go down my spine. My heart began to race and my breathing quickened. Was this place really a part of my past? Was I really once a patient here? I continued down the hallway, searching for answers. I needed to understand what was going on. Why did this place feel so familiar? Why was my name on that clipboard? I had so many questions, but no one to answer them. I was alone in this strange and unfamiliar place. Then I saw it, a figure standing at the end of the hallway. I couldn't make out their face, but I could feel their eyes on me. I called out, hoping for a response, but only silence answered me. Slowly, the figure began to walk towards me. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest. Who was this person? What did they want? As the figure drew closer, I could make out the details of their face. It was a woman, and she had a kind smile and gentle eyes. She looked at me and said, "You shouldn't be here." Her voice was soft yet firm, and it seemed to echo in the vast hallway. "This place is dangerous," she continued, "and you're not safe here." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. She was right. I knew I wasn't safe, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. There was something here that was calling to me, something that I needed to understand. "Please," the woman said, reaching out a hand. "Let me help you." I hesitated, torn between the fear that was pulling me back and the hope that her help would set me free. In that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. Would I let fear consume me, or would I reach out for help? What would you do? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content.